Hello, this is Joe. Welcome back to the channel. Well, my magic levitation, that my typewriters levitate over the table. Yeah, my little 3 magic levitator anti-gravity devices are broken right now. I have to make more of them. But anyways, besides that, how are you guys doing, huh? So this is a Smith Corona 5TE, Smith Corona Electric. This was the first portable electric typewriter, and I think one of the best. So today I would like to talk to you about a subject different from what I usually talk about, which is typewriters. Surprise, surprise. So we talk a lot on this channel about using typewriters as part of the writing process. And part of the reason why I recommend using typewriters is because they can be a non-distractive method of writing. And what do we mean by distractions? Well, if you choose a contemporary form of writing, like using, for instance, a computer, there are a lot of intrinsic distractions that can be built into the operating system of a computer, regardless of whatever the operating system platform is. It's kind of agnostic to that. If you have notifications, you have a lot of apps running behind the scenes or whatever, or if you're using a tablet or a phone as your writing platform, any of those kinds of technologies can be distractive unless you lock them down and make them into more of a dedicated writing tool, which is kind of inconvenient if your phone or whatever your computer happens to be a tool you also use for other purposes. So for that reason, amongst many others, one of the others being that you might like to write to paper as your actual output medium, or at least to be able to produce a backup on paper of what you're writing. So a typewriter is a nice thing to have, and because they only do one thing, they don't have the distractions of an operating system that has other things running behind the scenes or is trying to do everything in your life. But there is another aspect to the typewriters and non-distractive writing thing, which is that some typewriters can have their own internal distractions. For instance, if you don't have a good operating typewriter, if it has mechanical trouble, and you're trying to focus on the thing you're writing, and you're trying not to be a mechanic at the same time, it can be very distracting. In that case, a computer and a text editor program of some kind might be a better choice than a troublesome typewriter. So there are internal distractions to typewriters, or there can be. Not only mechanical trouble, like intermittent glitches that happen, which can, as soon as you notice that problem, remove you from the place that you need to be mentally in order to write. But there's also the other kind of distraction with typewriters where, especially if it's a manual typewriter, you just don't get along with the kind of strength and force required by your fingers to type properly. That can be a distraction. And also, if you try to touch type on your typewriter and your fingers and hands aren't strong enough and haven't been trained for that, then you can be distracted by the poor imprint. You could be trying to focus on what you're writing. You look at the paper and you see, the imprint looks crummy. It's kind of faint. It's erratic. That's another distraction, right? So we don't just have external distractions from a computer-like device or anything else. We could have internal distractions in the machine itself. And when I think about what are the kinds of typewriters that really perform very well without offering their own internal distractions, I keep coming back to, some of the really large desktop standard manual typewriters, if they're serviced and in good shape, they can be really great machines because they were engineered for professional use in the office and offer less intrinsic compromises up front. But I also think, as you guys probably know from watching this channel, I think electric typewriters are probably a really good sweet spot when it comes to a typewriter that can remove a lot of distractions from you. For instance, this 5TE right here. This typewriter is really a medium-sized portable. It's a little heavy as a portable because it is electric, has the motor and other things that makes it heavier. The carriage, for instance, is a 5 Series Smith Corona. it's just like a silent super carriage. The body is the same way. Under the ribbon cover is essentially the same way. It's the same ribbon system, same carriage return arm and all that. But the keys are electrified, and you don't need to press very hard and or very far down to get them to register, and the imprint is always consistently the same. And so you don't have those kind of distractions from trying to work a manual typewriter when your fingers are not really trained properly for it. These kind of machines, I think, are a really good sweet spot in terms of focused writing with few internal intrinsic distractions. Now, the 5TE, I believe to be one of the best portable electric typewriters, probably are the best portable electric typewriter. There are typewriters, electric ones made by Nakajima, Brother, Seiko in Japan, all three of those in Japan. And then, of course, Smith Corona, under the SCM brand, made a number of electric typewriters in the 1960s in their 6 series, many of them with bigger carriages, bigger bodies. And I have probably 4 of those typewriters, I think, here. And what I notice about them is because of the drive belts, for some reason, those, even though it's a similar drive belt system, a pair of belts on the left side between the motor and intermediate pulley and the pulley that's on the fluted shaft. But somehow the 6 series machines seem to be noisier in terms of you can hear the motor running more and you hear that little thump, 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 thump if there's a kink in the V-belt. And I should mention that V-belts are no longer available for either the 5 or 6 series, and we have been using round cross-section plumbing O-rings generally as the replacements for them, and they do work okay. Anyways, I just find the 5 series machine seems to run a little bit quieter than the 6 series, and it's a little smaller. As far as the sweet spot of typing for serious writing, non-distractive writing, I got to put my vote on to the 5TE here, or similar Smith Corona typewriters. They're really great. Well, certainly an electric typewriter is going to need a power source, unless you happen to be using the SCM Powerwriter. Those are not super common, but they are battery-powered, 6 series electric from the 1960s. But most of the electrics are going to need a cord, a power source. So here's the 5 series, the 5TE, and plugged in, turn it on. So there's a little bit of a background noise. You can hear the motor turning, a little humming sound. But once you start typing, let's just grab this scrap of paper here. Once you start typing, these aren't really that loud. You know, I think they're quieter than many manual typewriters. But I think I can live with the slight background hum. Now, my microphone is located right here, which you can't see, I don't think. So it's just above it, maybe 18 inches or so. So it's probably picking it up pretty good. But it's not really that distractive, I find. And I think it's a very usable, nice typewriter. So as I mentioned earlier, another good tool for a serious writer is going to be a good standard desktop machine that's been well serviced. So it's a manual typewriter. It has all of the requirements of a manual typewriter. Mainly you have to have the right technique, train yourself to use the machine properly. You're going to need to give it a deeper keystroke, and you have to be fast and snappy with both pressing and releasing the keys in order to have good success with it. And of course you have to do that with all 8 fingers and your spacebar thumb in order to have good success. But I was going to, by the way, I was going to grab the Olympia SG1 and bring it over here, but I'm not a masochist. So, of course, none of these standards are in any way a portable typewriter. And so this is the kind of a machine where you're going to be using it in the context of a office environment. These don't have cases. There are manual typewriters, medium-sized portables that are relatively good, pretty good writing tools, but I really still swear by having a good manual typewriter. Like in this case, the Royal KMM. For my purposes, I personally find the keyboards on these Royals to be really good for long-form writing. Part of the reason is I don't have the distraction of the shift lock key being too close to the A key, which can cause my left pinky, which would be normally striking the A key if you're touch typing, often will hit the shift lock and it'll cause the shifting to drop a little and you have a dropped A. So I don't have that problem in the KMM because the shift lock is closer to the Q than the A. This is a problem that's unique to me probably, but what I'm saying in general terms is, especially with manual typewriters, you want to find a machine not only that has good action and it's been well serviced, but the keyboard. There are subtle differences in the spacing of the keys and also the way the rows, the tiering of the rows, how far apart, how high they go, how close the shift lock is, and those kind of things. You have to find the right kind of machine for your suitability that suits you. And the only way to really know is to try the machines out, and the best way to do that is to find a typewriter repair shop in your area. And by area, it could mean in the United States, it could be meaning in your state somewhere, or even across the border into another state. So you might have to do a weekend trip or something if it's required. But this is for the sake of creativity. You're trying to find the right typewriter so that you don't have to buy a whole collection of half-broken machines before you find the right typewriter, right? So I'm not advocating that you become a collector like I have become. If you want to be a writer, you want to have one or two good machines, so you have to go to a shop that fixes machines and find and try out the machines and find the one that'll work for you. But a machine, a full-size standard, is a really good writing tool. If they've been properly serviced, they'll last you another century or so, right? Longer than you're going to be around, probably. This one was made in 1947, and it's still going quite good. So besides the 5TE, which is over here, as a portable electric typewriter, there is like this Silver Seiko-made Royal Saturn. Let me open this guy up and plug it in here. Royal Saturn. So these are like an electrified version of the Royal Mercury, the Royal Century, made in the early 1970s. I can use this same piece of paper probably. So these are okay. I wouldn't say they're really quite as good as the 5TE. And so it is quieter though. So I'm going to turn it on. And I can barely hear anything. So it's really the quietest running as far as idling with the motor running. You can type fairly fast on these machines, but there's a couple limitations to an electric like the Saturn as compared to the Smith Corona 5TE. The big limitation is that the spring motor that runs the carriage, it actually moves the carriage as you type, it's the same spring motor and draw cord as in the manual Royal Mercuries. And it's a very light spring. And so it is possible to out-type the machine, especially with those two-letter digraph combinations where one letter is being typed on one hand, the other letter on the other hand, especially if it's index fingers, typically the faster fingers, like, for instance, the letter combination TH, which is I think the most common digraph in English. But it's possible to out-type the typewriter. And what that does is it'll produce a piling. The H, the second letter, will be a little bit piled on to the first letter at times if you do it too fast, because the carriage is only moving as fast as a manual portable Royal Mercury typewriter. And then the second issue I would say is, so on the Smith Corona 5TE, the shifting is electric. That's electrified motorized shifting, and it's quick, right, up and down quick. But with the Royal Saturn here, let me show you the platen knob, it is the same shifting as on the Royal Mercury and the Royal Century. It is the pivoting, the kind that pivots the carriage back. And the problem is this is strictly manual. And if you're starting a new sentence and the first letter of the first word is going to be capitalized, and so you capitalize it and then you immediately start typing the second letter, well, the carriage might still be coming down when you get to that second letter. And so you're going to have the second letter will be dropped below the typing line. These two issues simply means that if you're a fast typist, you could out-type the machine a little bit. So this is something you'll have to get used to if you want to use one of these. But these are nice typewriters. They idle essentially perfectly quiet. And it does have a convenient little snap-on shell case with the handle. Most electric typewriters, I really consider them to be stationary typewriters. So anyways, I'm trying to sell you on the idea that an electric typewriter is a pretty good machine, but there are some differences between some different versions that you need to be aware of. Nevertheless, this is a nice machine, and you could certainly get by and use it as a good, solid writing tool. Well, now we come across the 6 Series Smith Corona, the SCM era electric typewriters. This is an Electra 220, very indicative of the kind of electric Smith Coronas that seem to be fairly common here in the United States. If you're looking for an electric Smith Corona in the States here, you'll probably find one of these kind of typewriters easier than the 5TE. 5TE seems to be a little bit rarer. They're not rare, but they're just less common. So, yeah, this is the 6 Series, which was the follow-on from the 5 Series. A bigger machine, and this is a 12-inch carriage, and this also has the wonderfully energetic powered carriage return. You can type upside down maybe onto this paper. Yes, we're trying to be conservative now, are we? As you can probably hear, you can hear the motor noise, certainly much easier than on the Seiko, but also it's a little louder than even on the 5TE. So you can definitely hear it, and I have 4 of these 6 Series electrics, and a couple of them make a little tick 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 noise because the belt, the primary belt, has like a sharp bend in it from having sat around the small motor pulley for decades without being ran, and so that little bend causes a little tick noise, and I should probably replace it with an O-ring instead. But anyway, so some of these are commonly a little bit louder just idling, and that can be a distraction to you, but it may be sufficient for you to live with. This particular Electra 220 has the power space next to the main space bar. It has a half space feature. It has auto repeat on the period, the X, and the hyphen underscore. These are really competent electric typewriters, and you could easily get on with using these as a writing tool. These are certainly faster to use than the little portable silver Seiko Saturn. It has powered shifting. It is a segment shifted machine. I don't know if you can see the segment back in there, but yeah, it shifts really fast. And of course, it also returns the carriage really fast. So that may or may not be a distraction to you. I would say you probably don't want to leave, like, if this was a coffee cup, for instance, you know, you have your nice cup of tea or whatever. Can you see that? And there goes your coffee, your tea all over the desk. Probably don't want to do that. So for that reason, you have to be careful of that. But actually, when you get into the flow of writing with one of these automatic carriage return typewriters, it feels less like a manual typewriter because you're not having to stop at the end of every line to manually return the carriage like you would with the 5TE or other manual carriage machines. You literally can start getting in a zone where it's more like typing on a computer or a word processor. But you do have potentially a distraction with the motor noise. But again, the nice thing about these electrics is that the amount of force required to type is so slight. It's like a mechanical spring-loaded computer keyboard. And it's only about half a centimeter, like 5 millimeters or so, of key travel to trigger the key. And it always prints at the same force, even though you're using very light finger pressure. And you don't have to worry about having to pull your finger back quickly like you would with a manual machine that would interfere with the next character being typed. This is especially true if you're typing on Royal portables from the 1950s, Quiet Deluxe, which seem to have this kind of peculiar escapement issue by design, that they are more sensitive to, some typewriters are, to your typing style. These electrics really aren't sensitive to your typing style. In other words, you can have a poor typing style and you'll still be able to do good work. So this is just one of many different kinds of electric typewriters that SCM had in the 1960s. They continued to make them through the 70s, and some of the later ones have the Coronomatic, which was a cartridge system that slotted in on the side. I would just advise you to steer clear of those and get a typewriter with conventional ribbon spools, because you can reload those with your own ribbon. You can also buy new plastic spools with fresh ribbon on them yourself. So these are probably the most common electric typewriter that you're going to find in the United States, the 6 Series Smith Corona. They're more common in 12-inch carriages, as I said, but there's also a few that were made in 10-inch carriages, like the Electra 100 series. 110, 120 were 10-inch carriages, but they are heavy. They're certainly heavy. It's a little heavier than the 5TE. It has the big case, as you saw. This is another really hardy machine that is a great writing tool. More of a stationary tool, but it does have a case. You could take it on retreat to your cabin in the woods, provided the cabin has electricity. Well, this whole question of does the typewriter itself distract you further from the writing process, you can see that with beginners, newcomers to typewriters. They are not used to typing on a manual. They don't have the right technique or hand strength, haven't practiced and trained. You can see the struggle. You can see where they want to, from maybe a romantic or other kind of technological reason, they want to use a typewriter to write with, but you can see the struggle up front, right? It does take an investment in time and training to work up to using a manual typewriter properly. So I really think the electrics are the sweet spot when it comes to writing distraction-free with typewriters, basically mechanical printing to paper. I should put a vote in also for the IBM Selectric. Those are electric, just much more complicated than a version like this. Also, the Daisy Whittle electronic typewriters can be very good if you can put up, or if you can remove from your forefront of your mind the little delay between pressing the key and hearing the click of the character being printed. And that can be a source of distraction. But unlike all the other typewriters we've talked about, that's the only kind of typewriter that you can still buy brand new today. I was just looking on Amazon, like $250 for a Nakajima WPT 150. Brand new typewriter. So there are new typewriters that actually work decently that you can buy today. And if you were a person that wanted to write to paper and didn't want to have to deal with shopping around for an antique and getting it fixed, that would be one solution, perhaps. But I want to hear your opinion down below. I know a lot of us hobbyists dabble in writing, but we're not really professional writers. We're not really focused as much on the typewriter as a writing tool as much as we are the typewriter as a fun tool on its own, and I can certainly understand that. But if you have a real interest in long-form writing, but you want to write mechanically to paper, what is your thoughts about typewriters? Do you find electrics to be the better tool? I'd like to hear your thoughts, or maybe you haven't tried them and you'd like to. Drop a note down below. Let's talk about it. And as always, this is always about furthering our creativity with typewriters. And so I leave you with stay creative and have yourselves a great day, and bye for now.